Hi, welcome back. Do we need to test the sound? Is that what you said?
We're all
no?
good.
We're all good? Welcome everybody to this third and final day of our performance symposium for the Cymbeline-Anthropocene project. I'm delighted that you could join us on this third day and this final session of our symposium. What we have been doing here amongst ourselves, that is directors, dramaturges, and theatre makers here in the lovely Black Box Theatre at Montana State University, we've been talking a little bit about where we've come from and where we think might go, not just with this project, but how this project might transform future Eco-Shakespeares in performance, and Eco-Shakespeare not just in traditional live performance or in traditional theatres, outdoor and indoor, but in other media as well. So we'd like to now invite you into our conversation with your comments and questions about the performances and presentations over the past couple of days. And we invite you to do that either live directly on our YouTube channel, or if you would prefer to submit a question on our chat, that would be great. And we'll receive the question, and our Zoom master, Rebecca Salazar, will transmit that question to us. We will ask it on your behalf, as it were, and we'll add it to our ongoing conversation here this morning. So again, we started off this morning with me asking two questions, really to focus our discussions a bit, and they're very straightforward ones. First of all, a taking stock question of what do we think our project has achieved, not only over the past few days, but also over the past 2.5, in some cases almost 3 years. And then thinking about the future question, what do we think this kind of project will transform and remodel for, as I mentioned, for future Eco-Shakespeare and environmental Shakespeare in different parts of the world. So perhaps we could just recap some of our discussion, and then we'll very quickly go to you joining us online. Anyone want to just start our recap here amongst ourselves about what some of the points we think we've achieved or we've learned?
Well, I think one of the first things that came up when we had our earlier discussion was that this idea that you had, Randall, over 3 years ago, as you started putting it together and thinking about what the outcome would look like. This is something that really hasn't been done, taking one play and focusing on it and spreading it out across the world and seeing what it looks like when it comes to life. That this idea came together in unexpected ways, in ways that have enriched this play, so much so that we mentioned earlier that it won't be the same again, in that we're looking at this play from a perspective of ultimately eco-critical perspective, but that means so many different things in so many different parts of the world. Local, and we have this kind of back and forth dialogue between the local and the global. Mm-hmm. And here we are globally, and we've all produced locally. And it was certainly an enriching experience, and I think we could go further and add so much more to that. But ultimately, and Katie is joining us now, and I could turn it over to her, but her quote was, "It worked." It worked. And maybe I should turn it over to Katie after citing her.
Pass the ball.
What was the question?
The question is, or the comment was, this project has worked, and I think if I can extrapolate a little bit, we've made it work not only for a play that people might have thought rather improbable for an Eco-Shakespeare project, but I think what this project hopefully has achieved, one of the things, is to provide a paradigm for how we might rethink other Shakespeare plays in eco-critical, eco-dramaturgical directions. There's been a lot of terribly useful, practical advice that has come up in our discussions and presentations over the last few days. I very much hope, this is also thinking future, of course, I very much hope that our project, because it now is going to be available permanently in terms of our symposium presentations being recorded, that that will be a resource going forward for other practitioners, teachers, and critics to think about other Shakespeare plays, including the sometimes obscure ones, because I think as a point that was also raised in our discussion a little bit earlier, is that potentially Theo Black mentioned quoting Yusuf, forget her last name, Yusuf.
No, Yusuf's her last name.
Yusuf is her last name.
Yeah, Catherine Yusuf is her
Catherine Yusuf, I'm sorry, I was getting it reversed. She makes the comment that every play can be approached as a race play. Well, I think our project has demonstrated, at least in theory or in principle, that every Shakespeare play can be made an eco-Shakespeare play if it's approached using local environmental questions that are urgent, that are necessary. There's so much in Shakespeare, as we all, as Shakespeareans know, but as audiences have always appreciated. And I hope this can be used as a paradigm for expanding those possibilities in tangible and creative ways.
Yeah, especially because as a script writer or a playwright and as a director, one is so much on one's own, making decisions. And if we were working in this direction, suddenly to have this opportunity or through this project to share views and to contest things with other people who are thinking the same or not.
Yes.
It was absolutely very, very important for me. It's before and after having this encounter and having been with this opportunity of sharing views. I've been working in this direction for the last 7 years, but I didn't know there was a movement.
Yes.
So that sense of belonging,
Yes.
is very important. That's something I take from this gathering and this idea, this project.
Yes,
And
it's a lovely way of putting it.
Well,
Belonging.
and just to pick up on what you're saying, I think that sense of collaboration, that there's a community, that there's a global community of people working on this is so exciting for us all. Like we share ideas, and like we did back in Santa Barbara, but we're continuing to do through this conversation and through the website, which lives on. And one of the things that came out when we talked about the various productions and presentations is that so many of our adaptations of Cymbeline have been about collective action, about collective mourning, and various ways of dealing with ecological challenges that are really based upon collectivity and that sense of collaboration that you're talking about.
Yes.
You stole my word.
I'm sorry.
Collective.
Collective's a good
Collective.
word.
Well, no, I mean, it's tied into the whole experience, I think, on our end, particularly going into the pre-production process and having this theme as the genesis for the collaborative process that we engaged with our designers and ultimately our actors and then our communities and audiences, I think it really provided us with a really great gateway into broadening this conversation about what we've been working on, I think, here for the past several years, drawing awareness further to the issues that relate to our region, our part of the country, our part of the world, and how this event here in the now has also further inspired how we can look at our future seasons and way in which we can be more mindful in how we produce, both in terms of our carbon footprint, but also the way in which we can broaden the conversation with our audiences, and as Theo mentioned, with our education programs as well, so that we're hitting every generation, that we're working K through 90 or 100. You know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. His metaphor was planting seeds. This is he used that metaphor that this project has been planting seeds and germinating new interests, new creativity and ideas, because people take a seed, have been taking seeds, students, other theater makers, and growing them in their own soil, as it were, to extend it a little bit, in wonderful ways. And that's exactly what we had hoped, and we hope will continue to, grow a new garden. There, I'll extend the metaphor.
Yes.
Maybe no further, but or a forest, and that reinforces that sense of belonging. And Katie Brokaw used the word solidarity, which I think is a key word as well. That audiences, not just theater makers, need to feel, but audiences need to feel, especially those who already feel they have environmental awareness and motivation, but also for those who feel, well, I haven't quite found the right community or a group of like-minded people yet that I can feel I belong to, and who are also interested in these kinds of things, especially if I'm maybe new to being environmentally aware, or not quite sure how to do it or think about it or express it. So I think that's all, I hope, one of the things that we've achieved here, and that might grow in the future. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just to elaborate on that, Randall, I think one of the things that is great about Shakespeare is it's one of the few places, and I think a lot of our countries, where people from across the political divide will come together. And that it's also a space that's intergenerational. And Cymbeline is so much about kind of intergenerational repair in the end. And so having those moments where you have people who are having this collective experience who aren't necessarily, it's not like we're all at a climate march together, or at a political rally together, or we're hanging out with people just in our peer group, that you're able to see, oh, like these young people care about this too, or these older people care about this too, right? It's not okay boomer, like these are the people who started Earth Day, right? So I think that like having those moments, that like the Shakespeare space, not always, and it's still too white, and there's it's still too elite in a lot of ways, but it has the ability, especially when it's democratic in the way that Montana is such a great model of this, right? That it is going into these places and bringing people together who frankly just don't inhabit the same space together most of the time. And so I think that that's one of the really cool opportunities.
It's a mutually, collectively transformative process. It's not just about, and we were talking a little bit about this earlier, it's not just about creating a show or making representations that are beautiful Eco-Shakespeare or good Shakespeare. It's not just that kind of aesthetic imperative. It's also about how the whole process of thinking through Eco-Shakespeare transforms us as well, all the people involved, and enlarging that circle of people who get involved in various ways. And I think that's one of the other ways in which we've, I think, made some breakthroughs is we've transformed the idea of what Shakespeare, eco-Shakespearean performance means in terms of practices, in terms of tangible practices and models. We have some of our productions, of course, have turned Eco-Shakespeare in terms of traditional live theater, outdoor or indoor, into different media, into film, like the Imogen and the Wild film that Yosemite Shakespeare made, or the comic series that Rob Conkey in Australia is presently at work on, and he's posted 2 of the future 4 episodes that is taken from his indoor performance a little over a year ago in Melbourne, Australia, and he's, to use his word, he's remediating it, and he's remediating it for different audiences to preserve certain things that, of course, are ephemeral in live performance, and that will give it a future, hopefully a transformative future. And we also touched on the fact that so many of the productions involved in this project have had a public humanities aspect to them, a public outreach and aspect to them, and for those, especially amongst the student performers and student productions, there's been a whole eco-pedagogical aspect to this production, which is fantastic. And again, there is so much just practical advice that has come out in the last few days about how to teach, either in a theater class or a drama class, or in a more literary classroom, Eco-Shakespeare, and what to do with it, and how to transform it. So I think that's been exciting to expand that sense of activism and outreach. That's been terrific, and we hope we provide some practical paradigms for that as well. Is there any other major points? We think we've been summing up things here, I think, quite nicely. Anything else that people would like to? Any pet keynotes?
I just wanted to share another possibility of thinking Eco-Shakespeare, not necessarily from the dramaturgical point of view, but the actual staging, the performance itself. I did in 2015 a staging of King John, because it was an anniversary of Magna Carta, and that's very important. But how could I put on stage the story of a medieval evil king and make it interesting and appealing to us today, apart from the fact that it was in that context that the Magna Carta was created?
Yes.
So what I did is using everyday sporting garments and set the whole thing in a gym. So the contest between French and English was between people in the gym.
Yes.
So it began with people practicing different sports on stage, and then the actual play began. So suddenly, before the audience, very little changes in their garments, the same kind of clothes, but cut and reshaped. So the play was going on, advancing, and those cuts were getting medieval shapes. Oh. So it began as a 21st century play, actors in 21st century garments, and ended up completely medieval, so
Yes.
just before the eyes of the audience, and using recycled clothes.
Yes.
So that's another ecological approach to theatre and to Shakespeare.
Indeed.
That's a wonderful example of the kind of best practice and environmentally oriented practice that Katie Brokaw and her group or the Earth Shakes Alliance is engaged with to encourage theaters around the world to improve their environmental habits and practices in the course of producing Shakespeare's plays and other plays, of course. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly easily Google Earth Shakes Alliance, and you'll be taken to their webpage and see the kind of work that they're promoting and encouraging. Great. Well, that's I think a nice recap and a nice summary. So here let's invite you into our conversation, and we hope you have some comments and questions just about the ideas we've raised here, or if you have particular comments about what you've seen and heard in the last few days, we'd welcome those. And again, you can do this either directly or sending a question through chat. So we know we have some people out there, and please don't be shy about sharing your comments and questions. I saw something flashing up there, but I don't know if that was a question.
I was just going to mention something which came out of a week's. We had a school staying with us for a week, and I meant to say it when we were talking about educational stuff, but we got feedback. They were all young people. I think the oldest was 12. It was a primary school. And it was partly the fun of being out of school for them. But they all wrote in the feedback they sent to us that they really, what meant most to them was to learn how brilliant it was to learn in the open air. As simple as that. They just found working in the open air totally helpful and strengthening, and they learned far more than they ever thought they would have done at school, because they were out in the open. And it's such a simple thing. So, which of course we all know.
Well, that's wonderful to get that feedback and have made those have touched people in those ways and made those kinds of tangible connections. Well done. I know Montana Shakespeare in the Parks with their schools program. I think you said, Kevin, you go to 120 schools. Is that right?
Yeah, between there's the high school program, is the Shakespeare in the Schools program this fall, engaging just over 50 schools, and then the elementary school program, Montana Shakes, engaging over 60. Yeah, and it's interesting. We talked earlier about how we could further our efforts through the education programming to raise awareness and conversation, whether through the shows or through the post-show discussion that we offer, or the workshops and the classroom activity. In this past year with the Montana Shakes program, utilizing A Midsummer Night's Dream to invest in the idea of how students could utilize junk and trash to create their own storytelling and to create puppetry opportunities. And so there's a lot more for us to really discover and offer and engage our students with these ideas that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And of course, Katie and Paul Prescott, who's not here this morning, but with Yosemite Shakespeare, have been doing this for a while for people visiting Yosemite National Park and doing their annual Earth Day performance of, and Billy's been involved too, of course, of various Shakespeare plays. And of course, the one that is now preserved for eternity is Imogen in the Wild. They're absolutely superb adaptation of Cymbeline. Well, once more, I'll call for comments or questions from anybody out there. We know you're there. We hope you're there. Well, if we aren't going to have any comments or questions, I feel confident we've offered a lot of very rich material over the past 2.5 days, which has been preserved in recording, thanks to our wonderful technical people here from PBS, who have made wonderful sharp, clean, visually, they've made us look superb here, I think, if I may say so, recordings of our sessions. So it's there now as a resource. I hope you'll visit it and revisit it. You'll see the themes that we've just briefly touched on here this morning, talked about more at large. And many other aspects of both our project and Shakespearean ecodrama in general. And so please do that. And of course, this continues to be an interactive process in the sense that we welcome your comments through our website, Cymbeline-Anthropocene.com. Please visit that anytime you want, and they take advantage of our comments page. Tell us about perhaps your future ideas for Eco-Shakespeare, what you may be planning in your local communities. We've heard a little bit of that through the people participating here about future plans and expansion of possibilities. We'd love to hear also, we'd love to expand that circle and expand that community of belonging and activism, and see how that's going in different parts of the world, because that's extremely important part of this process, is that creative expansion and outreach. So please do take advantage of that. And for those of you who are there, and I know you are, even though you perhaps haven't chatted with us this morning, that's fine. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it, and you're taking the time over the last 3 days to join us at various times. And we'll see you at a future Eco-Shakespeare in Performance event somewhere, and with another Shakespeare play. Who knows? Maybe as well known, maybe less well known, maybe better known. We'll see what happens. Anyway, again, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you all for all your contributions and for all the energy you brought.
Thank you all too. See you soon, I hope. Take care. Bye now. Bye-bye.
Much about other things too.
We will indeed, and just to say, if anybody finds themselves in Exeter or passing, in the meantime,